InterACTion Theater is, its artistic director is Harold Brooks, who's the assistant program coordinator for the Center for Social Policy. And the theater will also be facilitated by Amey-Taylor, who is assistant vice president for human resources, learning and development. So let's welcome the InterACTion Theater team.
Good morning. How are you? Good. We are delighted to be invited back. I believe this may be maybe our 5th or 6th year as a part of this orientation. Last year, we added another element, so I would like to also introduce our panelists who are going to have a role as this process ensues. We have Dr. Eli Goldblatt, who is a professor in the English department. We have Dr. Jean Boyer, who is assistant professor in the School of Psychology. And we have Dr. Karamu Welsh, who is a professor in dance. And they are all members of the Provost Teaching Academy. So thank you very much for joining us. And they're going to have a very clear role that will be evident to you shortly when they have an opportunity to respond to what you will be responding to as you see some of the situations in which you may or may not encounter being played out in front of your very eyes. This indeed is an improvisational theater troupe. Anybody know anything about improvisational theater? What is it? Yes. You yell out, and because we're being taped, I'll have to repeat it. I saw a hand somewhere in here. Yes. Made up on the spot. That is just about right here. It is indeed made up on the spot. This particular improvisational theater troupe has been around Temple University for over 20 years, has performed here and there and all over the place, and has had a lot of fun doing an element of improvisational theater called sociodrama. Sociodrama is based on the shared central issues of a group. So instead of thinking about what may be on your mind right now, we actually ask you. And then the actors play back what they hear, and you get to talk to the actors get to talk to you, and our esteemed panel are going to talk to us all and give us some advice on how to do things even more effectively. So, if you notice, it was a key piece of this. You have to talk to us. All righty, that's how it works. So typically in theater, you know, there's that wall and the actors are there and you're observers. Here you are active participants. So what I'd like to do, if I could, is call the actors up to the front, across the front here. And we want you to imagine for a moment that they are you. For most of you, your classes are beginning next week. Huh? Right? Okay. I am fortunate enough to teach 2 graduate classes in the College of Education, and I've been working on my syllabus the whole summer, and I'm going to be spending the weekend going over things, looking over stuff, making sure that I am prepared for my first day, which is Monday as well. So, I'd like to hear from you some of the things you may be thinking about as you anticipate going into the classroom next week. Now this requires that you just yell out.
Unprepared students.
Unprepared students. Class clown.
Caught cheating.
Caught cheating.
How to organize my class.
How to organize my class.
Unmotivated students.
Unmotivated student at Temple University? Unmotivated students.
8 a.m. tired students.
8 a.m. tired students.
Wonderful students who are excited to be there.
All right. Woo! Wonderful students who are excited to be there.
Students who are consistently late.
Ooh, students that are consistently late.
Sexy students.
Sexy students. Woo! I didn't expect that one, but I like it.
Breaking the ice on the first day.
Ah, breaking the ice on the first day.
Do I have to listen to another PowerPoint?
Oh, you're thinking the students may be saying, do I have to deal with another PowerPoint? Boy, you've really gotten me, because my whole first day, my class is from 5:10 to 10:10. And I know, Mondays 5:10 to 10:10. And my whole first day is a Who Wants to Be a Millionaire game, and it's PowerPoint driven. Now, I have stuff in there, but it is PowerPoint driven. So the students, you may be anticipating a little death by PowerPoint syndrome. Anything else?
Disruptive students.
Disruptive students.
Shy students.
Shy students.
Grade grubbers.
Grade grubbers. Woo! Boy, I'm telling you, between the grade grubbers and the sexy students, boy, we have a lot going on in this university. What was that?
Building trust.
Building trust. Yeah. So on that first day, not only do you want to warm up the temperature in the room, but you want to establish some trust that you'll need to build upon through the course of the semester. All righty. Well, we have a lot going on here. Okay.
Can you give them a couple of minutes?
Yes. Oh, we have two new actors. So let's go back to the sexy students while we're waiting. We do have a very strong harassment policy here, and we value our ability to be able to really establish rapport and yet know the boundaries. All righty. Okay. We are about to watch what we call in the theater world a machine. And it is an artistic interpretation of some of the thoughts and feelings that you have just shared. Let's watch.
Why is he texting while I'm talking? Why is he texting while I'm talking? Why is he texting while I'm talking? Why is he
I can't
texting
believe
while
they're
I'm
late
talking?
again.
Why is
I
he
can't
texting
believe
while
they're
I'm
late
talking?
again.
Why
I
is he
can't believe
texting
they're
while
late
I'm
again.
talking?
I
Why
can't
is he
believe they're
texting
late
while
again.
Overachiever, 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 overachiever,
I'm not really sure what I should do about it.
overachiever.
Really good.
Not funny.
I'm gonna be able
Not
to
funny.
I can't believe they're
Not funny.
Gorgeous. Oh my God.
Not funny.
Why is he texting?
How am I
Not
supposed
funny.
to teach with this guy in this class? I don't
Not
understand. How am I
funny.
supposed to teach with him in my class?
Not funny.
He just looks too good.
Breathe. Let's give them a hand. All righty. So clearly you have a lot going on in your heads right now. And a lot of it is related to classroom management. So let's look a little bit more. We're about to have a scene. Our TA is coming in for her very first session with her students. We'll let the scene play out a little bit. We will freeze. We'll get some of your observations and then some from the panel.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. No, it's fucking my idea. Right. Yeah. But no, what I need call loud, okay? Yeah.
Excuse me, guys.
I don't know.
Hello,
Yeah,
good
but she's
morning.
supposed to be there.
Sociology
She's
101,
supposed
right?
to be there at the time. You know, I know. Yeah. Just a second. Okay. Yeah.
I'm gonna give you a second
Yeah, okay.
set up.
Yeah, no problem.
I'd like to ask you, so reading there on Blackboard,
Let me get off the phone right now. Okay, all
I
right.
already read those, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah, text me in 20 minutes.
Give me
All
one
right,
second.
great.
I need to set up my thing, and then
Okay.
I will.
Got it. Yep.
Does anybody ever take a sociology? Okay. It's not gonna be boring, I promise. Do you have a question?
Did you help with that exact friend in the next classroom?
Actually, I might, but I think I got it because in my little teaching packet, I got. You know what?
Weren't you in
Excuse me.
history?
Excuse me.
Oh my God, were you the guy with the thing that
Right.
with the pencil? It's
Exactly.
like, ah!
Yeah.
Okay, look. Okay.
I'm sorry, yeah.
I
My
think,
bad. Okay.
yeah.
Can we set up some ground rules for class?
Yes, we can. I was gonna do that, but at first I wanted to just introduce myself and, yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna say the notion of ground rules. We're all adults here. I'm a little bit
We
slightly
are all
older than everyone
adults,
here.
yeah.
And one of the things I think that might be important, and I've been in undergrad classes before, of course, for a number of years. I have a family and all that, but I'm thinking, my suggestion
Why don't
to
you
you
start
is
by
such a-
introducing yourself?
Oh,
and
okay, no
then
problem.
you're
Justin, my name is Harold Brooks. I own a company, actually, in Center City. And, I'm taking the sociology class because I need it, actually, to get the supervisor, entrepreneur license and everything. I think it's important to know, I bring a lot of kind of personal experience to this topic, and I'd be more than willing to share some of my life experiences with you young folks in the classroom. So I'm here as a resource. I really am. Okay. No problem. Right.
greatly appreciate
Okay,
your
yeah,
personal experience. Yes.
Should we start by talking about the first chapter of the book?
We're not quite there yet, but
I'll be honest, I don't even have
all right. So before we get started, I'm sure that you guys thought that there was going to be another professor here, but
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said. Excuse me.
I am the teaching assistant. But I think that I'm actually going to be doing the majority of the teaching this semester. So I really want to get to know you guys, and I think that yeah.
I just take it. Okay, can I take that after you're done?
Yeah, at some point, I'm sure she's gonna be here and she'll be ready. But before she's here, I'm gonna warm you guys up. I'm
Would you give her my cell phone number, because she might want to talk to me about some of my experiences.
Can we talk to you just for a moment here? How are you feeling right about now related to this class?
Well, I've done a ton of work to prepare for this, and I'm really ready to go, and I feel like we're not really getting much done, and I've done the readings, I'm ready to talk about it. I want to just get started.
Well, thank you. I noticed that you didn't have a lot to say initially. I was just wondering about that.
Yeah, just boring class.
You can tell that already?
Oh yeah, she says no controlled classroom. And besides, I'd rather not listen to a Miss Overachiever whine in my ear, so I'm gonna put my headphones on.
Okay, well, welcome.
open book, but there's nothing really going on, so there's something to pay attention to.
Wow. You think it's going to get better?
Probably not.
I noticed the two of you seem to be really glad to see each other.
Yes, she took a class last semester together.
I see.
We got to follow each other on Instagram and Facebook. It's like, it's totally cool. Okay, we were home circuit. Yeah, hey, it's
We
great
had
to
one
see
last class, we're just assuming we didn't have one class.
Bro, it was awesome. It was awesome. Like, it's great seeing you again and everything.
Did you catch the name of the TA or?
It's on the syllabus somewhere, I'm sure.
Well, glad you two found each other. Yes. And-
Hold on, I'm sorry. Somebody-
Okay, okay. I don't want to interrupt you, but I just sort of
I'm
noticed
good.
that.
I'm good.
Oh, good. I'm good. I just sort of noticed that you were offering yourself to sort of support the instructor here.
Oh,
It
yeah.
looks like she might need that support. What do you think?
Well, I'm excited about this class, actually. I love being in a classroom full of young people because, they're just hungry for knowledge. It's a lot that I can share with them, the challenges going through and my success,
Oh,
I love these types of situations. I'm looking forward to it, actually. I really am, yeah.
Thank you. All right, and finally, RTA. Oh, give a little empathy back for you here. How you doing? Was this what you anticipated? Speak up just a little. I know it's a sensitive moment for you. You want to capture everything.
I mean, I really prepared for today, and I didn't know that I was going to teach the class, like the whole class, but then I had a phone call before here, and the professor's not coming, so I was like, okay, I'm going to get in there and, try to do my best and get the class warmed up, before she comes, but I don't think she's actually going to be coming, and I didn't want to say that right away, because I don't want, students to be nervous. I'm just TA, not just a TA, but I am a TA. And I really prepared for the summer to do this, and I've been working on my research and just really digging into sociology. And I really want to let these students know how great this field is, and to get them excited, and maybe they'll be sociologists too. But they're not really telling me. They didn't give me a chance.
No, I definitely don't think that they gave you a chance. Alrighty, we have a room full of people here that I think not only could empathize with what just happened to you, but might have a little bit of advice. Do you take that advice? Alrighty. Now that's good that you're open to a little developmental feedback. All right. Anybody have a little bit of feedback here? Yes. Yes, sir. Dave.
Oh, sweetie, you gotta talk louder.
All right.
Louder. Is good?
Yeah, you got a lot of other problems, but yeah, volume.
So on the list of problems, there's a list of problems, but one of them is that she doesn't have enough authority in her voice to really command the attention of the group. Oh, while I'm over here, let me get you. This is Elliot.
Yes. Well, I noticed that you were a little confused, with the computer system and everything. Maybe if you could have come to the classroom before class, figured that out, come in, got the thing started, they shut up. So, I don't know, maybe.
All right.
I should have done that, you're right. I didn't know.
A little bit around eroding her authority right from the
Yeah.
get-go if she can't even get stuff going. All righty. Here we are, and this is Alice.
Yeah, also not only arriving to class early enough to set up and be prepared, but greeting students at the door so you establish a rapport with them from the very beginning.
So establishing the rapport one-on-one so you don't have to deal with mob. All right. Yes, John.
It sounds like from your introduction that weren't prepared to be thrust into this role, and so maybe the computer problems weren't necessarily something you anticipated. If you're going to fake it, smile big and use a simple technique. You can say, okay, why don't you guys take a moment, introduce yourselves to each other, and use that time to settle yourself, prepare yourself, that sort of thing. Let them introduce themselves amongst the class and then introduce themselves to you. So come prepared maybe with some sort of activity in your pocket, in your magic bag of tricks. Go ahead and get them started so that you can get yourself set up as well too.
Thank you.
Sounds like have a plan A and a plan B. And a C and a D. Here we go already. I'll come back to you. Yes.
I think it's also important a lot of the time to kind of introduce yourself and talk about your experiences, because there is the sense of like undergrads kind of think, well, you're just a student too. Why are you qualified to teach me? But as graduate students, we do have a lot of experiences that qualify us in different ways. So I think that that's important to establish that.
Very good. So there is sort of a credibility thing that has to be established early on. I think, was it you? Yes. Pauline.
One of the things which I want to echo is that of your confidence level. The reality is you will not know the personalities until the first day, and they're just thrown right in your face. And don't for a moment allow your confidence to dip, because you're going to need that to handle and deal with the diversity which you clearly have in the classroom. So don't let your confidence dip.
Yes. The visible and invisible diversity that you see. Was there another person there in the middle somewhere?
Yeah, it was about the same.
All righty. Good. Thank you. I'd like to turn to our panel, please, for some other observations, comments, and perhaps a little bit of advice here for our TA.
Good morning.
I hope so. They tell me that you have to get it close.
All right, then. Yeah, I think a lot of the comments in the audience were excellent. I think that many of us are thrust in situations where we don't know exactly what's going to happen. We try and be as prepared as possible, but again, the personalities, the diversities, the issues, also someone asking you to teach at the last moment. Pauline's comments, excellent. It may not be that no one is 100% confident, but you can't let them see your vulnerability, because students will then find that hole and they will work on that. So you have to be very, very careful. I also think that the other comment about, of course, if you have a very large class, reading everyone as they come in may not be possible. But I think that you have to establish, the moment you're in the class, you have to establish your presence and the fact that you're the teacher. And you being a TA, it shouldn't be, I'm just a TA, or, you are a teaching assistant, but you come there with a lot of knowledge, much more knowledge than your students, and you should be able to, you should be comfortable, and you should own that so that you don't allow them to diminish you. So, but I think many of the comments were very, very good, and of course, the group was excellent, and I'm sure my colleagues, as a teacher for many, many, many years, I have had all these situations and then some.
Good morning. I also think your ideas were wonderful, but you still have to stay for the rest of the orientation. And as you move forward, I think you're going to start to see, no matter what the situation, but there's some general guidelines. So preparation is a big deal, having a bag of tricks. And this is the tough part, because if you've never taught before, then where are you going to get that bag of tricks? You'll build that up over time. But you can also start to research it. The literature's out there. There's a fabulous class called Teaching in Higher Education. And you can access each other, access other professors. Start talking to anybody to say, what would you do if? And you're going to start to hear even more and more good ideas, like you heard now. So that whole idea of building a repertoire, this is where you're starting.
Is everybody anxious enough? I think a lot of what this event is for is to try to get out in Yiddish we call it the spilkies. Just like, ooh, there's stuff running through your veins, you're not sure what to do, and this is scary. And I think the beauty of this drama is that it gets it all out in the open, and you can begin to look at it. And I really value the one person who probably was trying to be overly Pollyanna-ish to say, well, there are a lot of wonderful students out there. Temple is filled with lots of wonderful students. And you're not going to get a whole class of this, usually. But any one of these people might show up in your class one way or another. I want to go back to the sexuality question again. And what I want to go back to is the laugh after the question. And I think that what it points out is teaching is a profoundly human art. And everything that is about being human is in the classroom. The difference is that as the teacher, you have a different position than everybody else in the class. So the sexuality comment is a comment that violates what we're trying to think about as a teacher. And it is very important that you understand that you just cannot have any sexual or romantic connection with somebody you're teaching. That's just wrong. And not only that, it's not good for your health or anybody else's health. So, but the issue remains, which is that when you walk in, you have all kinds of feelings about all kinds of people. And it's your job to process those things, and you can't do it all at once. You're going to get to be a better teacher. Even despite yourself, you're going to get to be a better teacher. And you're going to make mistakes. So let yourself make mistakes, but let yourself depend on the fact that you're a smart person, you're an ethical person, and you're a person who's not alone, because you can go and find allies to talk through issues that you may have had in the classroom or that you're worried about having in the classroom. But I just want to say, this is the second time seeing this group, and I just love what they do, and thank you very much.
At the end, it is indeed a human experience. Well, thank you very much. Let us transition into the second scene. So let me go back to the audience for a moment, and let's assume you've done a decent job. You've established rapport and credibility. You've actually taught some content. You've taken advantage of your knowledge of differences in learning styles and all of the diversity issues. I mean, you've been doing pretty good at this thing. And then you have a test, or a quiz, or a paper, and you have to grade it. Any thoughts about how you might feel around giving grades? Yes, this is Aaron.
How close is close enough?
Say more, Aaron.
As long as you give them credit for something that is like, oh, well, I sort of see they're trying to get at the point, but they didn't really get the point.
Because there is some subjectivity involved in some grading. Some exams are objective, but many are subjective. Was it your hand, Carol?
Yeah.
Yes.
I guess my question
Put it really close.
My question would be sort of not knowing or needing to know the standards of the university for its undergraduate students. Learn what the population is and what we expect of them.
Okay. And that might specifically come out in writing skills, for example, right? Are you grading for content, or are you grading for grammar as well? Punctuation, that kind of thing. Here I come. You know, Oprah stopped doing this stuff. She sat down on the couch, and that was it. Do it.
You think it's really good host, like a
All right. That's right.
So I've heard from friends of mine who teach at other universities that they've had, and it might be the same here, an interesting time dealing with student athletes who seem to get out of things easily, for whom there aren't as high expectations. How to deal with that?
Okay. I know the paper was due, but I had a game and I had to be there, and it may be a little bit late and it may be funky around the edges, but I won the game. All right, it's you.
I'll go one better. I'll go, how do you deal with the parent who comes in and says, why did you give my child a B?
Oh, man. Well, you're talking about a helicopter parent. I did hear one that moved into a residence hall, right into the room, temporarily, but I did hear that, but that's pretty grim. All right.
How do you deal with an ESL student writing papers?
Oh, an ESL. How do you deal with an ESL student? Writing papers. Do you hold them to the same standard? As though English has been their primary language all along? Do you take into consideration? I've actually had that in my graduate class as well, because I do have papers, and a lot of the students have not had English as their first language, and you know, is that what they meant to say? Is that what they said? Were there reasons, including language differences, that created the issue? Anything else? Yes. Here you go. I can't see your name. Sean, there we go.
How do you deal with group grading if the workload completed was not done well with the entire group?
Oh, man. That one is tough. Yes, that one is tough because we know that some of the pedagogy and andragogy related to learners is that they learn often in collaborative sort of settings. But then how do you grade, particularly when you know that there are some issues around who did what and who didn't and who contributed to the end product. And then if they do self-grading, then that raises a whole other issue, doesn't it? Yes.
Just factoring in the difference between effort and competency. So factoring in how much effort did they put in and wanting them to do well versus are they actually competent?
Yeah.
Oh, boy, behind you.
Oh, Dominique.
What are the criteria for grading artwork? How do we deal with a classroom of artists and sort of a subjective, approach, trying to make it more objective?
Yeah, but artists on the panel, so I certainly hope to hear from her in this, yes. Because that really is something that some people could say is even more subjective, but maybe not. All right, you're killing me. I don't have to do We Fit today.
How do you deal with it when your rubric leads to the entire class failing? True story.
What do you do when your rubric leads to the fact that the entire class failed? All right, next.
How do you give students the feedback they need without discouraging them so much that they stop trying?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. And some people are more sensitive than others. And some of us are more capable at giving developmental feedback than others. Madison.
How do you deal with the students that you judge, like specifically the guy in the back who you want to fail, but they then pass the test? I guess that way.
Yeah. Yes, all right. attitude. I just don't like you. I'm pretty sure you were gonna mess up, and look at this. Ace it. Now what do I do with it? Sam.
How to like use your time efficiently, and some students need a lot of like specific help, and how to not like try to provide too much feedback, and you don't have that much time.
Yes, yes. How to manage your time around giving feedback, to be supportive, to be instructive, to be helpful. No, you can't do that with every single person. And the other side of that is that this is an academic experience that at the end of the day is an individual experience, and you don't want to create another umbilical cord that they use to hold on to instead of allowing them to have their own successes and perhaps not so that they can learn. I remember my freshman year at Howard University in 1966, like it was yesterday. Lord have mercy. I struggled. I survived and got my doctorate. But if you had looked at me that first year, you would have wondered. Is there anybody over here? Yes.
How about grading take-home assignments and take-home projects? Am I more harsh because they're college
All right, okay. All right, we're talking about take-home assignments. Is this an opportunity for them to do additional research and burn the midnight oil and really delve deeply and come up with quality products? Or is it an opportunity for them to find ways to creatively accomplish the goal? All right, okay. We are about to see a scene between a student and a TA where there are grading issues. Let's watch.
Hi, can you tell me about my paper? Why is this a C? I read her paper, and you gave her a B, and that was my B paper.
Okay, this sucks.
I followed everything that's on the syllabus. It's not my fault.
Apparently you did, because that's why you got a C. You like how you gave you a C. That shit got an F, but that was completely fine.
Okay, you don't understand. I'm on a visa, and if I don't get a 3.8 GPA, they're gonna send me.
Oh, they're about to deport you? Oh, that sucks.
Extra credit, you give me like a 3E.
That means I have great extra credit. Well, no.
Well, you don't understand. I don't want to go back home. I want to stay in America and finish my degree.
See, I do understand. That's why I'm telling you, the paper sucked.
Okay, can you tell me what sucks about it, please? Because I followed the syllabus.
All right,
I answered
first
question
thing-
1, I answered question 2, and here's
All right,
question
so
3,
this
and here's
is,
the conclusion.
All right, so first thing first, this is not elementary school. And second,
But I asked you, I emailed you for feedback when I
And
gave you
I-
a draft, and you didn't send anything back, and I would be
Wait.
the final draft.
what? You serious? Oh, you want to be the girls? We don't got time for this. So like, if you want to talk about this at another time,
so
or you
that's
want
what, Professor, I need to talk to someone, because you're like the worst TA ever.
Is he the worst TA ever? Leave Marine up there. Let's do a little walk and talk. Any stress going on in your life? What's up?
I didn't sleep enough. I didn't eat breakfast this morning. Dog woke me up, just like a little cranky, and I was just trying to give her some critical feedback, like trying to help her to understand that there needs to be blunt honesty involved. I think in this world, in order for us to be better, we need to just be really honest with each other. That's the way you should go. I was trying to challenge her. That's my way of letting her know there's not that nice people in the world, and really, I'll give her. You know, that was
Wait, all right, we got it. You were all about her in that particular moment, and you were willing to rise above the fact that you didn't have breakfast, you didn't sleep well, the dog woke you up, and Lord knows what else is going on.
So you get it too, though.
I get it. I get it. You stand right there. Okay. Is it possible that you didn't have a good night's sleep, all these sort of things may impose themselves in a moment? All right. You're going to get some advice for maybe how to manage yourself in the moment in spite of that kind of thing. Let's go back to the grading issue for a second. In your attempt to really give her good feedback, I think you started with the word, it sucked. All right. So, good approach? Tough love? The verbiage could be improved. But what, Neil, if it did? No, what if it did suck?
You mentioned it's not elementary school, so I mean that's a slightly better.
I mean, is there a way to say to somebody, this was not university quality work?
Just like that. And use specific examples.
And use specific examples? Okay.
Suggest a writing center.
Suggest a writing center if it was a writing issue, not just a content issue or a comprehension issue.
I mean, it probably has to be established beforehand as far as how you're going to grade a paper, but taking notes on the paper, responding to an email if the student really does, being prepared if it's a student that's constantly giving you a hard time about grading, that you're ready for it. Maybe the elementary school comment comes out, I don't know, the 7th or 8th time, I don't know, probably not really that.
All righty. So responding to emails, writing things on the paper,
Specific
comments on the paper.
Sorry. And also, I think being clear about what the policy is if you want to talk about grades. In other words, if that's clear and established, whether it's a certain time after class or whatnot, then you give yourself the time to be prepared, etc. So it's on your terms. You're not getting, And so even if they come in hot or whatever and really upset, just try to de-escalate the situation.
Right. You want to make it as much as possible an environment that is conducive to a positive interaction for everyone involved. So if you get sort of, what's the term when somebody catches you off guard in that moment like that? Which one? In the moment, you may not be as prepared, particularly if the dog woke you up. How do you wake you up? You sat on it? Licked your face? I imagine it was running wild. All right, tell it.
Well, I mean, I just think it's like a general attitude type thing. You have to treat them like they're the most important person in the room. I mean, like anybody you're talking to, you just have to make them feel like they're special. No, I know it's warm, fuzzy, whatever, but...
Hey, you're a warm and fuzzy guy. You started us off the happy, energetic student. We want that. We like that too. Did I see another hand before I turn it to our esteemed panel? What do you do? So I see two issues here, at least two. You all may see even more. One is this whole notion around the objectivity or subjectivity involved in grading and how do you make those decisions and all of that. Maybe three issues. The second is How do you give someone that feedback, that support that they need, and know that it's just enough and not too much? And the third one is, how do you deal with your own emotional intelligence in a situation like that or another situation involving a student? Go ahead.
Well, there's several thoughts that come to mind in this situation and also in the scenario we saw earlier. And that is around student behaviors and activities and dispositions. In this one-on-one situation or in the whole class situation when we had all of the chatter and cell phone and all kinds of stuff, I think it's important to remember that there's only one person's behavior you can control, and that's yours. You can't control her behavior, you can't control the classroom behavior, you can only control you. So that's one thing to sort of keep in mind. And if you're only controlling you and not trying to control somebody else, then right away you're going to have a base for a more collaborative rather than adversarial relationship. I think secondly, again, whether it's in-class behaviors or a student seeking this kind of feedback, you can do two things. You can think about what are the behaviors that I want from my students, whether it's in-class behaviors on how we have discussions or how you enter the room or how you come to see me for feedback. What is it that I want? How do I want that to be? And then you teach it. You teach it. You think about, what do you not want? What behavior do you not want to see? And then you prevent it. So you want to think about, and I've heard a lot of this about planning and having a policy, and that's exactly right. So when you're working on that syllabus, it's not just the content of what you want to teach, which is, kind of important because that's why we have universities, but the context around how that's going to happen. So what are your course policies about coming for feedback? When can that happen? How can that happen? And think about, in terms of the emotional intelligence piece, this I think is one of the hardest parts of teaching, whether it's preschool or grad school. And I've taught both, and there's amazing similarities. People cry, they love their mommies. But it's an interesting paradox, is teaching occurs in the context of a relationship. And it is a human endeavor, as Eli was saying. And our job is to create good relationships. Whether it's one-on-one, or if you're in a classroom this size, to have a relationship with the group. And you want to have that strong interpersonal bond. At the exact same time, you can take nothing personally. So you need to develop a strong interpersonal relationship and take nothing personally. The last thing I'll say about this particular scenario is whenever you can, do something that's called listening with the third ear. This woman's not concerned about her grade. And she's not concerned about her writing skills. She's very scared because this is a really high stakes thing that she might have to go home. I don't know where she's going home to, and I don't know what the repercussions of that are. But it's a pretty big deal. So I would want to, respond to that concern and anxiety. The other thing I would want to think about is in the country of origin where Arlene came from. What is it normally like when students talk to teachers and professors? Is it the same or different than here? So you want to always think about that. But again, even if it's, however she talks to her professors in her country of origin, if that doesn't match what you need, again, go back to the very beginning. You have until Sunday. Think about, what do you want from your students, and how am I going to teach that? And what do I not want, and what are some things I can do to prevent that? And again, you're saying, well, what are they? Tell me. And I will, but I'm going to pass the mic back and forth. But also say there's resources out there that can also say. And the book that Pam, is there a raffle for that book?
Yeah, for tools for teaching.
Yeah. Tools for Teaching does have all the tools in there. And you'll get those kind of tips. And you know, look on the webpage at the Teaching Learning Center, look at those resources, go to those workshops, ask other professors, take the class.
Yeah, I agree with Jean. I also think that we as teachers, we have to be careful about our assumptions and our expectations. In this scenario where the student is asking about a grade, even though she didn't do well, the teacher should not assume it's because that she will continue to not do well, or that she is a problem. In other words, sometimes, as you heard, I mean, we all have had moments in our education where we didn't understand something, we've been stymied, it was an issue of comprehension or whatever. So that one has to not assume that because she received a C, that she is a C student. And one should not speak to her or treat her as though she can't do better. So I think that you have to be very, very careful about your assumptions and your expectations, and also responding to what Jean said. Again, you also have to take into consideration, since she did bring up the visa issue, you have to respond to that. You may not be in a position to do anything about it, but you should at least let her know that you hear her. And I want to speak to the artists in the room, and artists meaning, people from visual arts, film, theater, dance, and also creative writing as well, opera, music, of course. Again, pretty much the same rules apply. However, in a studio situation, be it art, music, or dance, there is, of course, subjectivity. That's going to happen. But the teacher has the responsibility to really see the craft, structure, whatever things that have been asked of the student. For instance, I may be critiquing something or examining something that may not be my cup of tea, but it is not the teacher's responsibility to go there. In other words, I'm not, I can respect that the student has decided to do this particular kind of postmodern work, and I might not be into postmodern work. But that's okay, because then if there's craft, if there's skill, then I can critique it. And you really have to be careful, because we do in fact come up against that all the time. Or someone else, especially with undergrads, they'll come in with a very naive sort of approach to their art, to their writing. And you want to guide them to a more sophisticated or mature writing, but you don't want to really rain too hard on their parade, because it really discourages them. So it's really important to encourage the students, even as you try and guide them. So again, with this situation, as many of you said, this TA, his verbiage was just inappropriate. You may feel that way inside, but you just don't tell someone something sucks. And it's really important, and as our positive gentleman said, you do have to treat that student at the moment as if they are very, very important, regardless of the night before, or the morning of, or what you ate or what you didn't eat. We're all human, and sometimes we have a bad day, but you really have to monitor yourself as a teacher.
And I'm just going to hog the mic one more time. I'm a psychologist. I live on the Cartesian plane. I worship at the altar of empirical science and data. And one of my all-time favorite psychologists is D.F. Skinner. So you may or may not have heard of him. But this is a quote from Skinner, and that is, "All data are subjective." And I don't know if there's anybody here teaching organic chemistry and you're going to give a multiple choice test. It's subjective. What? Because why did you ask this question and not that one? Because whatever you're putting on there is subject to what you chose to measure and assess. So all data are always subjective, and that's okay. Subjective assessment is not the same as biased assessment. It means it's subject to context, it's subject to criteria that are established a priori. It's subject to something that I would call a decision frame. So what are sort of your rules for deciding when someone's on the fence, and you have that decision frame organized ahead of time, your students know what it is. So it's always subjective, and that's something that's important to keep in mind. It's different than bias. You don't want to root for somebody to fail, but it's subject to your own lens. It's subject to all kinds of stuff. All right, now you can talk.
Well, the wisdom from my colleagues is really great. So let me just say some things to back up what they just said. First one is the listening. The most important skill a teacher can have is not talking, and it's not conveying information, it's listening. Because it's through listening that you make the kind of connections that allows you to go forward and your job is not to convey information. Your job is to make it, to make the best possible environment for somebody to learn something. When you make a hostile situation, no matter how eloquent you are in presenting material, students aren't going to learn it. And that leads to the second point, which is you face, particularly as graduate students, you face a very challenging paradox in our system. You are all recruited, accepted, and encouraged to come because of the promise, your promise as potential experts in a field. But when you go into the classroom, the field is only part of what you're doing. Teaching is a transitive verb. That means that the verb takes an object. And you could be a teacher of chemistry, a teacher of English, a teacher of business, sports and leisure management. But that's really not an adequate description of the word teaching, because teaching also takes the object students. Ideally, what you want is to be a teacher of students, a teacher of chemistry to students. So really, because you come here as an expert, you have to be conscious of the fact that when you're in the classroom, your first obligation is to teach the students, and think from the student's point of view, how are they going to learn your particular subject? They're not going to learn your subject at the level that you know it, not for a very long time. But you want them to have the best chance to learn the subject you're teaching in the best possible environment, and I think that's what my colleagues were saying in their remarks too.
Oh, great. Thank you so much. I had just two more points to add. One is that actually two of my former students are here. I teach a course called Facilitating Adult Learning, and one of the first slides on my PowerPoint of the first night is from one of my favorite books, Illusion by Richard Bach. And it speaks to the fact that we are all teachers and learners. And I know just in the time that I've been a teacher, I have learned as much about the subject matter and myself as I feel that I have facilitated the learning in others. The next final piece I had related to this notion of grades is that occasionally, in spite of our best efforts and our thoughtful responses, we make mistakes. Last semester, I had a point system, and I did the points, and now because of Blackboard, all of that is fairly transparent. So at the end of it, my students, it was a group project, my students knew, based on the points that I had awarded on the final group project, what they were going to earn. And so I sent it out, and they responded, and this group emailed me back. And they said, we were a little disappointed because we felt that we covered the content. And they had gone through their paper, item by item, around the areas that I was concerned about, and showed me where they had made connections that frankly I had missed. And so I made the adjustment, which is not easy. You have to go back in the Blackboard, you have to justify, because in some cases the point made a change in grade. But I had to be willing to admit I had missed some things. So that's also a possibility. You don't want to do that all the time, but if it is there, I think somebody at the beginning said, to also be honest. To be honest. If you're not prepared to be honest.
I just have one quick point. I want to get to the question someone asked about athletes. Because it gets to a bigger question. First of all, you're not alone in the classroom. In addition to faculty in your specialty, there are a lot of very good units on campus who can help you both with your teaching and with your students' learning. The Writing Center, the Math Resource Center, and for athletes, we have actually a really good academic support program for athletes. And they do not report to the athletic department. They report to the provost. That's a really big difference. And it wasn't always that way at Temple University. So Justin Miller's the head of athletic support. If you have a question about an athlete, you need to talk to his office immediately. Sometimes students are running a trip on you. Sometimes the coach is maybe pushing the envelope in a way that isn't appropriate for your class. It is a very tough job being an athlete in Division I school. It's a very tough job. I don't really think necessarily the system is the best system for the students in that situation. But this school doesn't have a tradition of cutting athletes a lot of slack. I mean, there's been some of it, but if you compare it to schools I won't name, we're doing pretty well. But the NCAA does have rules, and there is a compliance officer on campus. So if you see something like that, you need to talk to them right away.
And here's an anecdote, and just, again, so you know, 3 anecdotes equals data. It's just one anecdote, so it's not data. But my experience with student athletes that I've had has been strongly positive. Because I don't know if there's any athletes in the room. You don't have to identify unless you want to stand up and say, this is what I do. Sometimes athletes have a little edge over some other students because they know how to set goals. And they understand that to attain the goals, they must practice, which means doing it over and over and over again. I think that the experience that I've had... Exactly, yes. I think the most challenging thing for me with the athletes has been more temporal, when they have to go away and they're missing a critical class. And again, that goes to planning and prevention. So not just for the athlete, but what do you have in your syllabus universally when somebody has to miss class. So it's not just for athletes, it's for anybody who has to miss class.
Great. I'd like to bring the actors up, if I could, across the front. And we're about to experience a closing machine. So our hope was that as a result of this presentation, that you would feel a little bit more prepared for your roles next week. So imagine now, it's the end of the first class. The end of the first class. The last student is packed up and is leaving. And you're getting ready to walk out of the room. What are you feeling? Relieved. bad as I expected.
Overwhelmed.
Overwhelmed. Accomplished. Excited for the next class.
You have a sense of control, because the first time it's always like, you don't know what's gonna happen.
Yeah. More of a sense of control.
Mixed emotions because you felt like you were successful with some people but didn't get to it with others.
Okay. Mixed emotions. Mixed reviews at this point.
You realize you forgot to like say something?
Like the next reading or the next assignment, oh man, now I have to do a Blackboard email. I forgot something.
Maybe a sense of purpose because you've met your audience and the people that you're going to be working with for the semester.
Yeah, a sense of purpose. You've actually met them. You now have faces. You can visualize where you're going. Any others? Glad you've chosen this? Okay, all righty. Harold, if you would lead the huddle.
I'm relieved I survived. 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 I'm relieved success.
Happy it's over.
I'm relieved.
Happy it's over. Happy it's over. Happy it's
I'm
over.
relieved I survived.
I made the right decision.
Success. I'm relieved.
I think I made the right decision.
I'm relieved.
Success. I can do this. I think I made the right decision. I can do this. Success. I think I made the right decision. I can do this. Success. I think I made the right decision. I can do this. I think I made the right decision. I can do this. I think I made the right decision.
One down.
We could start over here and have you introduce yourself to the group.
Hi, I'm Mary Burkhardt. I'm currently going to be a sophomore at Troupe University, and it was nice meeting you all, and good luck.
My name is Stephanie Oliver. I'm a community activities coordinator for a center in Philadelphia called the Achieving Independence Center. We work with 16 to 21-year-old youth who are transitioning out of the foster care system. I always thought I wanted to be a teacher, but maybe not.
And my name is Harold Brooks, and I'm a longtime teacher employee with the Center for Social Policy and Community Development out of the College of Social Work.
My name is Arita. I'm actually a TA. I was told to do this morning. So I'm part of you guys. I was her graduate student. So one of you.
Hi guys, I'm Jen. I'm also going to be a teaching assistant for the Adult and Organizational Development Program, and I'm one of the former students also.
Hi, my name is Sarah Light, and I am a senior. I am probably the only actually trained actor here. I am a musical theater major in the theater department.
My name is Dwayne Padilla. I'm a coach at the Achieving Independence Center. This is my first time ever doing this. Mr. Brooks asked me if I wanted to. I said, sure, why not?
And I am Amey-Taylor, Assistant Vice President in Human Resource and Adjunct Instructor in the College of Ed's Graduate Program in Adult and Organizational Development. Much success to you. Thank you very much.